All right, hello, testing. Cool, we are live. Hello, everyone. I'm testing a brand new computer, so let me know if you can see me and hear me all right. And I have the chat right next to me. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, so everything seems to be working fine. So today I'm just gonna work on something slightly different. So this is a character that that I did for my 3D snippets projects. In case you don't know about that, it's every month I try to work on a project, like a different project, just testing things out. It's basically like an experimental ground for me to try different things, workflows, come up with ideas, develop brushes, that sort of thing. So this was for the month of August. So if you're interested to see the type of stuff that we do in the 3D snippets, it's 3dsnippets.com. But yeah, basically this is the result of one of the months or one of the projects. And I thought I would just revisit this and create something new for this, just because this was done before the new version of ZBrush. So right now I'm using ZBrush 2022. So the new tools allow me to create a bunch of different details like these ornaments and this armor stuff really easily. So I just thought maybe let's revisit this. Maybe, I don't know, maybe work on I think like a helmet. That could be cool. Something that is a little bit like an in-between hard surface and organic stuff. So yeah, that's the idea for today. Can I show the topology of his shoulder armor? Do you mean this thing? Sure. By the way, I'm using the standard UI. I haven't actually transferred my custom UI and all my shortcuts, so I might be a little bit slow today. Here we go. So this was originally a half sphere that I cut in pieces and then retopologize. That's pretty much it. Obviously, with the new tools, it's even faster. So if I want to recreate this and have like a nice topology or a clean topology to recreate all of this, because these details are basically normal details, or I build them to be normal details. You won't be able to see that. There's no clean topology following the ornaments. But let's say that if you want to create something like this, let's just jump into a sphere, make it a polymesh 3D. So with the new tools, and let's go polyframe, yeah, something like that. Let me just check. Yeah, we don't have any subdivision. So just thinking about the new tools, what I would use is something like the knife lasso. So let's hold Control and Shift, select. Well, in this case, we could use, I suppose, the knife rectangular. I'm gonna go for the knife curve and just go ahead and let's do have symmetry enabled. This is really hard with the when I'm used to like a different UI. So hold Control and Shift, and then you can press Alt, and that creates a point in the Bezier curve, or like create a point that allows you to curve this like so. So let's say something like this. Right? If you want, you can do something a bit sharper, like tapping twice, like so. So that would be kind of like the base of that shoulder, maybe a bit more than that. I'll tap a couple more times. Oops, let me do it again. Hang on. I'm gonna do this here. I'm gonna tap once, twice. Okay, let's keep it simple. Trying to find like a nice shape for it. All right. Let's just keep it simple. Otherwise, I'll spend too much time. All right. So that basically cuts that mesh and gives us like some nice quads and topology here that we can take advantage of. I'm gonna bring in the gizmo and I'm gonna squish this tiny bit, sort of like, you know, having something similar to the shape of this. It's a little bit more pointy here. So something else we can do with the new tools or with the new additions to ZBrush. I didn't have symmetry enabled, so let's just do that. Sorry, I had symmetry enabled, I just didn't have perspective on. All right, something like this. Cool. So I basically did another cut in here. That's why we have two different polygroups. But now another cool thing is that you can bring in the gizmo, and let's hold the Alt key to reposition that pivot. I'm gonna put that over here, right? So now everything that I do is from this point, but with the new edition of 2022, now you have a focal shift that gives you kind of like a proportional editing. By the way, if you in case you're not part of my email list, I just released a new video. It's kind of like a long format video of me just going through some of the new tools, and it's in the YouTube channel. So if you want, just check that out. And I cover basically all or most of the new features, and I focus on how to use them or how to get familiar with them, and then integrate them with your own workflow. So there's like a specific methodology that I use. So I covered all of that. But basically what this allows you to do is to take the focal shift, and that gives you kind of like a proportional editing. So now when I rotate from the same point, you'll see it doesn't grab anything. It's kind of like a, in the video that I shared, I call it like a magnetic field type of thing. But yeah, so this is pretty cool because yeah, we can push this even further to 90, and any positive value is gonna, you know, restrict the effect of the gizmo to, you know, closer to the pivot. That's what it is. So I can take this now and I can push. As you can see, it's maybe too pointy, so you can play with the focal shift to get something like this. Maybe rotate it slightly, a bit more. And honestly, this focal shift on the pivot, in my opinion, is probably one of the best updates of this update, or one of the best features of this update. And it's such a simple thing, but it makes a huge difference in my workflow. So I think this is one of the best, if not the best. I think it's on par with the Bevel Pro. To be honest, I use it a lot, and hopefully I'll show you some cool things today on how to use it. But yeah, this is just obviously one way to go about it. You can obviously do that with the move brush and AccuCurve as well. But yeah, let's actually give it a bit of a pointy area here as well, and maybe another one here. So I'm just holding the Alt key to change the pivot. Sorry, to change the pivot of the gizmo, essentially. All right. So now that we have this in here, what I can do to again try to go closer to this type of effect is to, let's see. If you want clean borders, you can do another set of polygroups and then do a series measure. In this case, yeah, we can do that, I suppose. So we can use the slice curve, or let's use the slice curve. So here with the slice curve, I'm gonna hold Control and Shift, then Alt. So every time that I press Alt, it basically creates a point in that curve. So with the slice curve, I can just define that edge, and I can do the same thing for the bottom. That's only if you want to keep some nice edges. And that's it. Let's go ahead and select rectangular piece. And obviously we don't need any of this because this is going to be hollow. So what we can do is hold Control and Shift, isolate those. Let's enable display properties double so that we can see inside. And then let's go to geometry, modify topology, and let's click delete hidden. So now we have a single-sided mesh, and we have a set of polygroups. Of course, these three polygroups that we have here, ideally you want to have that as a single polygroup, or maybe two to maintain a sharp edge here. So what I'll do is isolate that. Then yeah, I'll be slow today without my custom UI. So let's go to polygroup and polygroup visible. Okay, so now we have these two polygroups, and let's isolate that one more time. And with the slice curve again, hold Control and Shift, find the slice curve. I'm gonna try to slice these here around the edge, maybe a little bit more, like that. So let's also group visible. Cool. So now we have literally just 3 polygroups. Obviously the topology is not great, but that's the idea. So you set the polygroups, and then we can take advantage of the Z-remesher by using polygroups with the Z-remesher. So let's go to the Z-remesher, and I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I have the keep groups enabled. The lines that I cut through this model with this slice curve, they're pretty clean. So even though the topology is not great and you have triangles and stuff, the edge itself is pretty clean. So it sort of like collapses everything towards the edge. If I were to smooth everything just with the smooth brush, you'll see it's pretty horrible. But if I don't smooth it, it looks pretty clean. So for that reason alone, I'm gonna keep the smooth groups to 0, which is kind of like the automated version or the automated process. When you hit Z-remesher with smooth groups at 1, it's going to automatically smooth the groups. And that's in the case of, if I have something like this, like a Dynamesh, I would keep this at 1 and run it. Otherwise, I'll keep it like this. And let's go for half the polygon count. So I have 10,000. Yeah, let's go for half. And I also have symmetry enabled. So this is pointing towards the Z axis, I believe. Yeah, so that's good. Right, and let's go ahead and Z-remesh that. So that's not bad. Let's do that again. Maybe I feel we can smooth this a little bit manually just to help the Z-remesher. Another thing that you can do when you're doing this type of process and you want to maintain like sharp corners, well, obviously having the division between the polygroups help, but another thing you can do is bring in the move brush. So let's select the move brush, go to the brush palette, go to the curve and enable AccuCurve. That will give you that very pointy shape or effect. So what I'll do is I'll just exaggerate this slightly so that it knows that I want to keep like a corner there, or the Z-remesher knows. Let's try to do the same thing here. Doesn't have to be perfect. The Z-remesher will try to fix that. Let's do that again. Something going on here. Let's try to detect edges or keep the creasing, and let's just do a quick crease by polygroups. So where are we? Creasing, crease by polygroups. So now we have creasing between the polygroups. So hopefully that helps. It's having trouble. Oh, okay, I can see it now. You can see the issue here. So let's bring in the Zmodeler. I thought it was gonna be more automated than this, but it doesn't matter. We can give the Zmodeler some help. This is gonna take it's gonna take longer than usual with the standard UI. BZM. There we go. All right, so that's the issue right here. It's kind of like an overlapping mesh. So I'm just gonna tag that and delete it. And let's go ahead and go to bridge, edge. All right. So that should work a lot better. There was probably the resulting mesh of something that I did before. All right, let's do polygroup that, or polygroup visible. So we have those. Let's do it the polygroup creasing again. All right. So that seemed to work a lot better. Let's try it again. Nope, still for some reason it's not happy with that area. There's ways to sort this out. So what I'll do is turn off half. Just go remesh. Sorry. Let's change these to 10,000. That's what we had before. All right. So what I just did there was, instead of going down in subdivision level, when you have like issues with the zero measure giving you like some weird results, it could be for a number of reasons. One of them being having like coplanar meshes like I had here. And in fact, let me just double check that. Yeah, nothing is hidden. So when you have issues with the zero measure like this, what I try to do is, if none of the settings help you to automatically do that really quickly, what you can do is go up in subdivisions, or trying to achieve a larger polygon count, just to redistribute the topology at a larger count and then bring it down. So now we have a like slightly better topology. Let's see if that works. Well, it's kind of like doing it. Just need to give it again some extra help. All right. Now the top one is the one with the problem. I'm gonna increase the smooth polygroups. All right, maybe I went too far. Let's keep it the same. And what I'm doing as I remesh is just smooth this area so that I can simplify the geometry. But I think this one is pretty decent. All right. So yeah, there's ways to work around that when you have issues with the zero measure. For the most part, a simple geometry or a simple piece like this should be fine. I must have clicked somewhere. But yeah, so we have creasing, we have polygroups, and we have a nice loop in the border that we can take advantage of. And of course, you can, add more to it, or add more resolution if you wanted to. But this is still a single-sided mesh. All right, so I'll get to what we can do with this in just a second. Let me see the chat. Hello, how to install the new version? You can just go to the Pixologic license, to your licenses, and download that. And is the license nowadays is just with the email associated with your license, or once you install it, you can just put your email in there. Cool. Hey Doggy, how you doing? What are we working on today? So I just opened up. I was going to do, or my intention is still to do kind of like a rework on a helmet for this guy instead of this mask that I did. Just utilizing some of the new tools. So essentially, try to create a proper asset, but with the new tools in ZBrush 2021, sorry. But yeah, someone asked about this, and I was just showing you, and I spent a little bit too long in this one, but anyway. So yeah, that's why we're doing it. So just to wrap this one up, because it is a single-sided mesh, what we can do is go to the dynamic subdivision, click on dynamic, and let's also do a crease by polygroups just to double check everything is fine. And yep, I have a feeling that there's something wrong with with that corner. But anyway, so let's actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to uncrease polygroups. Yeah, so that's nicer. And I'm just going to crease the edge itself just to keep it sharper. So let's go to Zmodeler, right click, crease, edge loop complete. All right, so now before it was kind of like a curvy thing. It wasn't that sharp because this corner or this edge was also sharp, but that will give us a nicer result. And then we can sharpen this up when we add thickness. But basically the idea is you have a single-sided mesh, clean topology, and then you can just go ahead and use thickness in the dynamic subdivision just to add thickness, right? And then you can determine how much thickness. So something like that, right? And obviously dynamic subdivision, you can add or remove. So what I did really was I used the thickness, no subdivision level. So the thickness just gives me thickness with, without subdividing anything else. And I apply that. So now we have a watertight mesh that has thickness, but because we use the dynamic subdivision thickness slider, we have these polygroups as well. So if you want, you can just go ahead and do something like this. Let's go ahead and right click QMesh polygroup all, click and drag just to add this, or in fact, let's just isolate. Hang on. Right, so I could just isolate this and create a single polygroup, right? And then with the QMesh, because I have the polygroup all, I can extrude all of these together. And I can press the Alt key just to change the polygroups. There we go. And let's add a thickness. I mean, this one, you don't have to do this. I just thought I show you. Otherwise, we can isolate this piece right here. Let's do a auto group. So yeah, just the outer edge. And I can do the same thing. I can click and drag and generate some thickness for that mesh. All right. And then let's go ahead and go back to dynamic subdivision. I'm going to make sure I don't have any creasing, so uncrease all. And let's go ahead and turn off polyframe. Click on dynamic subdivision, turn off thickness. We don't need thickness anymore, and increase the subdivision level. Right? So now we have a pretty smooth, base to do whatever we want. And of course, we can go further and tweak the beveling amount and all of that. So we can use the Zmodeler, actually, right click and do insert, single edge loop. And I'm going to click on, let's go closer here. Hang on. And just get closer to the edge, just to sharpen it. You can also use creasing if you want. I'll do the same thing around here. There we go. That's it. So now we have a very clean topology. We can increase the smooth subdivision level. We can go ahead and apply that. And now we have, obviously, subdivision levels and a clean topology. And whenever we want to, we can, let's use one of the new brushes just to show you that. We'll probably use more of these later on, but the scribe chisel and the scribe standard. I quite like the standard, actually. So that will give you this kind of result, maybe. Holding the Alt key, you can create these sort of patterns. And that's the reason why I wanted to create something similar to that, that knight character, because now doing this type of effects or doing this type of ornaments is really easy. So let's increase that. And I'm just making up the pattern, but get the idea. You'll see that as I try to do something like this, it sort of like grabs from the previous area. So here is where, this is something that I talked about in the video that I released, but this is when you start to learn about the new features and getting familiar with them. And then once you understand them and have like a good idea of what they are, then you can start bringing existing workflows that you're familiar with or other tools and combine them together. So in this case, I'm running into this issue with there's overlapping between all of these pieces, right? I'm not gonna fix these ones, but I'll show you how to do it. So if I do something like that, there's gonna be like an overlap of the stroke. So what I can do is, let's go back in time. hold Control to set a point in here, go forward, right? Not all the way, yeah. And I can just go to the masking palette, for instance, and this was recently added to ZBrush 2021. Click on Mask Change Points, and you'll see it just masks all of the change points based on the difference between this point that I set and the current state. And I can just go ahead and boost that mask, so I can protect all of these bits. And yeah, and now we can just go ahead and do this, right? And now we have a cleaner mesh in there, right? And now I can just remove that point, and I can click on mask change points. So that again, well, once you do something, you can mask change points, right? And you can keep doing this, protecting every single ornament that you do. But yeah, that's pretty cool. With the new tools, it's a lot easier to do these type of things. So that's hopefully what I wanted, what I wanted to cover, and hopefully that gives you an idea. The thing that I actually want to do is a helmet, but the process of what I just showed you doing the sort of the shoulder, it's pretty much the same thing of pretty much everything that I did in terms of the armor. Is just a single-sided mesh working on a very simple low-res mesh using zero measure to create the topology, the base one, and then creating the thickness basically. All right, so I think this guy deserves something different for a helmet. So what I'll do, just to work a little bit faster, by the way, just to show you a couple more cool things that I've set up in this project with the new tools. So I have visibility sets. These ones right here, these are new. So the visibility set 1 has everything on. The number 2, it has basically everything except the nuts and bolts and the buttons and the sword. And the visibility 3 has less than that. Actually, there we go. So the visibility 3 has everything except the armor, so it has just all the padding. Visibility 4 has just kind of like the clothing, and I think that's all. Yeah, and visibility 5 has everything, including the old stuff. So visibility sets are a really cool, again, tiny feature or tiny update that you might think, oh, it's not as much, but it's for me at least is a game changer, because you can create visibility sets even if you have multiple folders, so you can still have things organized within folders, but only enable things that you want to see from each folder, and that just makes it a lot easier to be able to work with. Instead of like going here and turn on and off different things, it's just a lot easier. If I'm working on this and I say, okay, I wanna tweak something, like I know this character has some overlapping in the belt and the shirt, so I can go to visibility 4. That's the one. This is the overlapping that I know it was in there, so I can select that. Let's bring in my move brush, right, and I can just push this like so, just to change that, and then go back to visibility 1, right? So it's really easy to use. The way that this works, basically, you can select any visibility setting. So let's just do V8 so that you know what I'm talking about. And V8 or visibility set 8, I'm just gonna call it V numbers because otherwise I'll just say visibility too much, and I would have some, what's the name, like I forgot the name. When a word loses meaning, some kind of like phonetic disassociation or something. I don't know. It just lost me to me. So anyway, V8 visibility set. So the way that this works, you just enable that, and yeah, disable whatever you don't want to see. So that's my visibility set 8. Yeah. So there's no much to say about this type of tool. This is what it is, right? So maybe we can leave for number 8. It's gonna hide anything that's not metal. See how we go with that. Yeah. Cool, that's it. So basically we can go through those, and then if I want to just focus on the assets that are metal, I just go to V8, and that's it. So yep, that's pretty cool tool. And another thing that I use in this one quite a bit, but this one was introduced in the previous version, just that there's like new stuff that you can do with it. With the sword, you see it's kind of like in a pose and it's rotated and all of that. That's just because I like to kind of like see it in context, you know, like the thickness of the handle and that sort of thing, to see if the character can, you know, even though this is a fantasy creature, I just want to know that it is plausible. Anyway, the point is I use the stager. So if I go to geometry and open up stager, I believe in the previous version, and I'm not sure if this is right, but if I remember correctly, stager was part of the subtool subpalette. So, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, now it is under the geometry palette, or it is in the geometry palette. And so I have the home stage and the target stage. Let's go into solo mode, and I can click switch stage, and I have these now in the center of the world with symmetry as well, so I can work on these, do anything that I want. Like, let's just edit this, so I can just create something a bit more crazy for this, right? And yeah, and then just click on switch stage, turn off solo mode, and it will just be, you know, populated. So this is a fantastic feature. So the new stuff of what has been added to 2022 is the Interpolate feature, and that's, you know, it's pretty awesome because it allows you to generate meshes or create a new mesh based on two states. So if I want to interpolate this whole thing, I don't know how would that look, but let's try it. It might crash, but I'm gonna interpolate eight of these meshes between that stage and this stage, right? So 8 swords. So let's go ahead and click on the interpolate. Yeah, no, I have subdivision level, of course. Let's just delete some of them and do the same thing. There we go. So it just creates a whole new mesh. Actually, I just thought about a cool idea for a wing. Let's just try something. Yeah, so I'm just like a little bit all over the place because as I work with the new tools and the new features, I just come up with ideas that I want to test out. So let me just do that. Hopefully that helps. So let's go to the home state, and I'm going to turn this off now. So I'm going to set this to home stage again, bring in the gizmo, and let's turn on off symmetry, center, reset the pivot, right? And I'm just going to move this, oops. Let's move that so, and let's maybe rotate it around. Like this, and set it to target stage. So yeah, home stage, target stage, and we can increase that stage count to 20. Interpolate. Yeah, pretty cool. All right, so that's kind of like a wing, like a weird wing, and then we can bring in the gizmo. I'm just making things up. Like, this is not meant to be what we were doing today, but it's fun. So with the gizmo now, I can go ahead and, let's say, scale this thing out, but with the new tool, the focal shift, I can just restrict that and do kind of like a proportional editing. So let's push that one to 30, just a positive value, and do this type of thing. Maybe push that actually even more. Yep. And then we can also rotate things around or twist them. Let's do that from this point. Yeah, that's cool. Like I said, this is such a, like, it might not seem like a very useful thing, but for me, the focal shift is the best, the best feature of ZBrush 2022. You know, Bevel Pro is also pretty cool, but I personally use this quite a bit. Anyway, so we probably need to inflate this as well. Let's inflate this just to give it some thickness to this new wing that I created. And yeah, let's back to the gizmo, reset that. Let's get out of solo mode. So now this guy can have some wings. Actually, this should be kind of like the other side. And then let's refine it a little bit. Again, apologize. This is not meant to be what we've been doing today. All right. Yeah, like I said, this tool, believe me, is the best the best tool that that's available in ZBrush 2022. Alrighty, and then let's go to mirror, and then let's go to modify topology, mirror, and weld. And now we have some cool wings for this guy. How cool is that? And obviously we can edit this later, continue the refinement process, but that's a different thing. And if you want to make, obviously this is very even though it's like nice and fluid, it looks very manufactured. Like you can tell that it's kind of like an array in a way. So what I'll do is I'm gonna take the move topological brush, and I'm gonna also enable AccuCurve. And of course, so we have different different meshes. Let's switch to a different material. Solo. We'll get to the helmet in just a little bit. I got caught up with this idea now. So sorry. Let's see the chat. Is there a way to avoid stretching at the start end point of a rope in a curve? Sorry, I'm not sure what that means. A closed curve. I don't know what that means, Alex. I'm guessing in a rope, like a curved rope that has it has a tri parts, so it has like the top bit, the middle bit, and the bottom bit. The stretching, you can control that from the brush palette modifiers here. So when you have the curve enable, you can control the stretching in here, the tri-part, the curve resolution. So my first instinct would be to increase the curve resolution, so you have more resolution, and secondly, make sure that the top polygroup is kind of like at the same thickness or the same height as the center, as well as the one at the bottom, because ultimately when you use a tri-part curve, what ZBrush does is it leaves the first polygroup and the bottom, or like the top and bottom of the polygroup there at the beginning and at the end, and it just takes the one in the middle and it duplicates it or tiles that across the curve. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully that helps. Show please modeling acts of Zmodeler in. Sorry, some of these questions might be too specific. Where do you planning texture the character? I have Sebastian already textured the character. I did that in Substance 3D Painter. Let me just show you. Actually, if you just go to my ArtStation, it should be there, or just go to 3dsnippets.com. And the 3D snippets is where I do this type of projects, like on a monthly basis, different things. And if you go in the 3D snippets, if you go at the top, there is a tab that's called Projects. You see kind of like the final images of all the projects that we've been working on throughout this year. And you'll see this guy already texture and render and all of that. So yeah, that's there. Thanks, Milos. Glad you like it. How do you make the pants using cloth dynamics or inflate? The pants and the clothing is just hand sculpted. I do use custom brushes, and in this case I didn't use dynamics, or maybe I did, I can't remember. I can show you later on. Does it duplicate the mesh and interpolate the transform, or does it actually interpolate the geometry? It kind of like does I mean, that question sort of answers itself because it does the same thing. It's interpolating the geometry as it duplicates it. So it's basically, let me just give you an example of how this works behind the scenes in a way. So the home state, let's just do that very quickly just so they can see. Let's say a home stage here, and let's move this like so, and click on target stage, right? So now I can click on interpolate, and it's just going to create, new geometry. We lose the home stage and this target stage because, yeah, basically it just duplicates those between the home and the target stage, and it creates a new mesh. So this is just a single subtool, right? So that's the same thing. Let's duplicate that. Go back in time. Sorry. Right. So it's the same thing in a way. If you hold Control and click and drag to duplicate, right? You can duplicate just with holding Control in the gizmo. If I'm holding Control, by the way, still. So if I let go of Control, but I don't let go of my click, so if I can keep doing this, let go of Control and keep doing this, ZBrush, you can do this basically. So it is very similar in that sense. Obviously, this is like a quick way to generate this type of things, but it's very different ultimately, because with the home stage and the target stage, you can actually, let's say, set this to home stage. I'm gonna move this. I don't have to duplicate anything. ZBrush will do that automatically. So I will set this at the target stage, but it doesn't have to deal with just the position. You can just scale and rotate things around, right? So when I interpolate now, if I set this to target stage, it's going to interpolate not only the position, but also the scale and the rotation. So that's why it's, pretty awesome. Where were we? Yeah, building some some wings. Let's see. Can you create keyframes and animate this using C-movie playback? You can create, you can create keyframes, not animate, as in you cannot animate in ZBrush, as in character animation, I suppose, but the camera, yeah. How do you know where the focal shift fall-off ends when using the gizmo to blend things? Just guess to change the. So, yeah, again, if you go to the tutorial that I shared today on my YouTube channel, I just go a little bit more in depth in some of these tools. So hopefully that helps. And I cover kind of like the way that I think about the focal shift is like a magnetic field. So it basically spreads and fades based on this focal shift. So at -100 is very focal, is very it's 100% of everything, of encompassing the entire volume. And then if you go to +100, is very, very focalized. So there's not like a visual indicator of how much it's actually using when you use the gizmo. But yeah, the reference that I use in that video might help. All right, so there's lots of questions. So let me just continue doing a little bit more stuff, and then I'll come back to those. So definitely put them in, keep the questions going, and I'll just review them. Hola, Andres. Saludos. All right, so I just took this, and I'm going to go to the Polygroup subpalette. And see, polygroups, autogroups. So now we have different polygroups. We actually had different meshes. That's fine. We'll just leave it as it is. In fact, no, let's just leave it as it is. And then we can take with Symmetry, polygroup, sorry, not polygroup, move topological, and I'm just gonna variate those wings a little bit just to make it look a bit more organic. And that's just a simple, good, cool way to remove a little bit of that symmetry. All right, I think that's plenty. Cool. So yeah, we weren't planning to do the wings, but I think they're cool. And maybe let's move them a bit higher. Yeah. So now let's go ahead and do the actual thing that we should have started like an hour ago, which was the helmet. So just to make things easier, so that it's not full of stuff in the screen. So what I'll do is I'm gonna select the head, and yeah, just the head, and I'm gonna go ahead and clone that. So I'll just basically create a separate tool. We'll probably need the eyes as well, so let's go ahead and select the eyes, the tools, and I'm gonna copy that, go to that clone, paste, and that's it. So I usually do this when I'm working on a piece that has multiple subtools or a slightly more complex scene, just because it is for me easier to work in a separate tool. Like in this case, this is a new tool, and then just basically once I'm ready with the helmet, in this case, I can copy and paste it into the working tool, and that's it, right? Cool. Let me just do a quick pass on the chat and see if I can answer anything. Notice that focal shift on 2022 was muscle in Symmetry, and it did not mirror the operation properly. Can you test this here? Rob, I think the problem with that might have been the local symmetry. I can test it. I mean, I can show you what that means. It looks like that's the issue. So assuming you have to symmetry. So let's say this is, I'm gonna do a quick biceps muscle. I just love this focal shifting. It's just probably the best one. Again, I've said it like 4 times already. It's true. Okay, so let's say that this is your bicep. For whatever reason, this is just an arm. And I'm gonna go ahead and mirror and weld that to the other side. So if you notice that when you do something with the gizmo, with the focal shift or whatever, it could have the focal shift at the default -100 or not, and you do something with the gizmo that doesn't involve positioning. So positioning is fine. Yeah, most cases it's fine. But when you do things with rotation or scale, especially, it won't do it. It won't do it correctly. So let's say if I want to increase the size of this with the focal shift of 38. So if I do this, it's not gonna do it because it's basically, yeah. And also let's click on activate symmetry actually. So click on that. It's not gonna do anything because for one, the focal point of the focal shift, the kind of like that magnetic field point is in here. There are not two magnetic fields in a way, so it's not gonna do it correctly. And the other thing is that it's using the center of the wall to sort of like pushing it from that side. So let me bring in Epic Pen. So right now, here's the center of the world, right? So ZBrush is actually using, even though you're clicking on this point to scale, ZBrush is using the world axis, so this point right here, to scale it. So when you click on this to scale, ZBrush is saying, okay, there is this mesh in here, the center of the world is here, let's go ahead and scale things from this point, right, outwards. And that's why you see it's not localized that effect. So if you want to change that, all you have to do is go to the transform palette, click on LSym, which is local symmetry, and that changes that sort of center to be based on the center of this volume, right? So it looks at this bounding box type of thing, and it just uses this center. In this case, well, whatever you have the pivot. So now that I have that enabled, I can just do that, and that works perfectly fine. So I think that might have been what you encounter. Hopefully that covers it. Let's go back to this creature here. That makes sense. What I meant, geometry was morphing a cube into sphere. Cool. Can you make modifications by sculpting and to make interpolation between that? I'm not sure what that means, Milos. Can you interpolate along a curve? Yeah, you can interpolate along a curve, but that's with a different tool. Actually, let me just do that. I promise we'll get to the helmet eventually. No, why did I duplicate things? Just why this? So if I use, I don't know if this is gonna work with this brush, but if it does, it just covers what I'm trying. I think it does. It's just like different from the interpolation with the home and the target stage. So this is an actual interpolation between the strokes, which is probably more useful. You know, this is probably what you want. So let's take this transform. Yep. So I'm gonna do something like this, right? And it creates, actually, let's do a couple more. So we'll have 1.5 million. I'm gonna increase that. All right. So that's the first curve, and then I can just maybe, you know, let's change the size a little bit and do something like this. And then we can go to the stroke palette and click on, where are we? Stroke. Oh, here, interpolate. So let's just put that in here. Interpolate. And, let me just check that. No, it's doing it. I don't know. Maybe I moved the camera. But yeah, basically this is what this does. It allows you to do one thing like this and interpolate those. So this is probably what you want to use. Obviously, this is way too exaggerated, but essentially, yeah, you can do whatever stroke you want, and like the first one, and then the second one could be anything, and it will interpolate. And now with the new features, or the new added feature to this interpolation, which was added in the previous version of ZBrush, is that now you have the ability to interpolate not only two strokes, but also the intensity and the color, actually. So let's undo that. Let's do something a bit nicer. So let's enable RGB. Make sure that poly paint is enabled. I'm gonna fill the object with white, and I'm gonna use a blue color. Right, so now we have this like so. Let's change to a green color, and let's do something a bit sharper, like that. And now we can interpolate. Oh, I didn't change this intensity. Never mind. Which is pretty cool. So yeah, you can interpolate using curves, which is awesome. All right, so hopefully that covers it. Cool. Alrighty, so let's just move that away and let's get into the helmet. Okay, so again, many ways of approaching the same thing in ZBrush. In this case, because I don't really have a design for this guy, I'm just gonna use the usual tools. So let's go ahead and append a sphere, maybe. Let's go ahead and turn on transparency. I mean, the face of this character is actually pretty basic. But yeah. let's use the focal shift to just add a bit of a shape here. I'm telling you, this is the best, the best tool. So I'm just like holding Alt to reposition the pivot and just grabbing things from different areas. That's how I can just quickly shape this thing like that. All right, and then we can use something like the knife lasso. That sounds good. And let's just think about ways that we can split this helmet. Maybe we can do like a helmet that also has a mask in it. That'll be cool. So I want to duplicate this, and let's do the helmet first. So it would be something like that. Right? So that's kind of cool for the helmet. And then this other mesh, we can use it to create a kind of like a mask. And the cool thing about the knife lasso as well is that it works with symmetry, which is awesome. So okay, that seems to be all right. So I have two meshes blocked out. So I'm gonna hide the mask thing, then concentrate on the helmet. Go to the gizmo, and I have the focal shift at 50, so it's not as strong, this effect. And I can just push this closer to the head. And let's go ahead and move, or use the move brush to adjust things. So again, not a lot of new tools in this case, just making sure that the primary shape still holds properly. And by the way, this is just a, sphere. The topology is horrible, but again, it's just trying to focus on the primary shapes. And I don't care about the inner area at all. We're gonna remove that altogether. Let's exaggerate things a bit more. Again, just because of the type of creature and type of project I did, I want to try to maintain the exaggerated proportions and the stylization, so we can achieve that with those things. There. All right, so that's the basics of it. Let's use that mask and adjust this as well. Let's go ahead and turn off or turn transparency on. Just gonna push this closer to the actual face of the character. All right, and maybe I want to take this and make it a bit more pointy. So let's make it, take the gizmo, focal shift to positive values, and do that sort of thing. Maybe that's too much. Anyway, maybe that's not gonna work. Yeah, let's keep it simple. All right. So now that I have the the basics of this helmet, I see the primary shape roughly blocked in. Let's go ahead and let's do some fun stuff. So I'm gonna duplicate it just in case. Let's drop that here at the top in case I want to reuse that base for something else. Let's turn this on, go into solo mode, and hold Control and Shift just to isolate. To select the select rectangular, isolate this piece. Let's go to display properties, double, modify topology, delete hidden. All right, and then we can go ahead and do a zero mesh to see how that works and holds up. Also, I'm going to make sure that all the edges are crisp. So let's keep detect edges, and let's do a zero mesh by half. So yep, that's pretty good. And now that I have this this cleaner topology, even though it's not perfect, it's a lot easier to select these loops and assign a different polygroup. So polygroup, right? So now we have two different polygroups there. Maybe we can isolate this one as well. If we want to force to have a poly loop there, we can do the same thing for this area here. This might be too much, but that's right. And yeah, let's try this one again. So, whoops, polygroups, keep polygroups. All right. I think that worked just fine. So yeah, basically once I run the first kind of like zero measure is just to give it a rough indication of, well, not a rough indication, just to produce a cleaner topology, and then I can take some of the more specific tools to adjust that. So now we have a cleaner topology, we have symmetry and all of that, and we have some clean loops. I'm just cleaning things up a little bit in here, just to try to make it a bit more consistent. Right? I'm just thinking that it might be actually a lot easier to have these in separate subtools. Let's get out of solo mode so that we can see this guy. It looks a little bit silly right now, but I think it's going to work out. So let's say if I want to twist this in like this, just to protect, let's say, his face. Oh, I guess I can just do that with the move brush. But just to show you, again, to emphasize how cool the Gizmo focal shift thing is, I'm going to do that with it. There we go. So you can do something like this. And it's just depending on where you place it, right? Cool. So yeah, I'm going to duplicate this right now again. So this one, we're going to go to the dynamic subdivision, enable dynamic, right? Pretty cool. Let's go ahead and use the thickness, just to add thickness to that helmet. Right? We can apply it if we want to, but what I want to do with this other piece is go into solo mode. Let's enable polyframe again so you can see what I'm going to do. I'm going to isolate, let's see, yeah, isolate these two as well and do an auto group. In fact, let's just simplify this even more, as in, I want a straight line in here, so I can mask that edge. Yeah, sorry. Zmodeler. I'm gonna right click on an edge, and I can mask that edge by transpose. So if I click on transpose, edge loop complete or edge loop partial in this case. I want to click on that, and that basically masks just that entire partial loop. It's hard to see, but there's actually a masking right in the middle. And then let's go ahead and reset that pivot, and I can just do this. I think it's gonna be easier if I just turn this off. Yeah, let's undo that. There's probably an easy way to do that, so I'll do it after. Anyway, what I was going to do really was to take this and hide some of these polygroups, right? Essentially, these ones right here. You know what? We might need one in here, so let's hide these two. Auto group. Yep. All right. So let's hide these parts, and let's go to delete hidden. So modify topology, delete hidden. All right, so this is gonna be kind of like the framing of it, and this is what I wanted to do. So like masking those points, bringing the gizmo. Just to make them flatter. It's because I have the focal shift. I mean, it's a fantastic tool, but if you forget that you have it on, it could be disastrous. All right, so that's obviously that's the idea, to separate it in a different subtool, so that when we enable everything, so this is right now sitting underneath, right? I can very easily go to the deformation palette. I can inflate that whole thing just to push this thing out, but I think I'm just gonna keep it below, so that when I add the dynamic subdivision and add thickness, I can sort of like cross that out. All right, so it's pretty thick actually, and it's actually doing it in both sides. So you'll see right now what I'm doing with dynamic subdivision is, like, if this is the single-sided mesh, because of the offset, the offset here is set to 0, I think. Like basically the default settings. ZBrush is going to add thickness this way and this way, right? So from the positive and the negative side of the normal. But because I have this thing, you know, behind the helmet, I don't want to add any thickness to this side. I just want to add thickness to this side. So what I can do is do dynamic. I want to take the offset and set it to 0, or to positive 100 actually. And you'll see just adding from one side only. So I can use this to add thickness like so. And that adds that nice set of poly loops in there. So that's one way to do it. Let's go ahead and go into solo mode. And let's go to, let's see what, I don't think this is gonna work, but just for the sake of testing, let's do crisp polygroups. Yeah, that's too much. I kind of like the subtle edges there. One thing we can do though is turn off post subdivision, so it's like smoother, right? And because this is still a dynamic subdivision, we can use the move topological as well, and we can just basically push points on that single-sided mesh around just to adjust the shape. But yeah, that's it. So now we have those two things. In fact, because we have everything in that helmet, we have like I kind of like that, the fact that it's a little bit smooth, but I know that you probably want to see more stuff. So let's just keep it harsh edges like that. And what I was going to say is that because all the edges of these bevel or these yeah, or this extra mesh is covering the entire other mesh. So if I select this one, I can turn off dynamic subdivision. Well, sorry, not turning off, turn off the thickness, and you know, we can get away with that, and that way we can maybe simplify this even more, just to make it thinner. Right. So basically, we have two subtools. The one underneath, the actual helmet base, is a single-sided mesh with dynamic, so I don't have thickness there, and you know, we can cover those edges with this other mesh. Alrighty, so let's do the same thing quickly for the mask, and then I'll show you Bevel Pro with that, because I think we're tracking well in terms of time. All right. A little bit hidden. Actually, for this, I want to be able to obviously see his face. So I just want to use another tool from the new update. So circle, Control and Shift. Oops. Did I delete it? Oh, let's go and undo that. So the new tools, the new knife tools, they don't work with single-sided meshes. I forgot to mention that, because obviously what they're actually doing is kind of like a Boolean operation on the fly, and you cannot Boolean with a single-sided mesh. So keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and chop an area. I want something similar to the actual mask that this creature has. Yeah, I think that works. So now that I have created those holes, now I can delete hidden. There we go, and go to the, basically the same process. I'm gonna go a little bit faster here. Zero measure. I'm gonna polish by groups, simplify it. Go into solo mode, and I want to have some crisp, sharp edges here. Again, you can use polygroups to drive all of these as well. I like to just run the zero measure and then give it some helping hands just to adjust it. One more time. Maybe the same amount of polygons, but better distribution. For instance, we can, oops, hold Control and Shift, select Lasso, isolate this bit, go to polygroups. Yep, so now let's do the same thing, but keeping groups. There's something weird there. So again, when this happens, I mean, I can just do it manually. It's not a big deal. But when this happens, I just want to show you how you can go about it. So we can go ahead and subdivide this before actually it's crease all, not all, sorry, crease the edges, and subdivide this a couple times, and then delete lower. So again, we have more topology, and we just need to tell the zero measure to clean this up a little bit. So yeah, so smooth groups, half, delete that. So we have a simpler set of meshes, or a simpler set of loops. And I have no idea why this is doing this. It shouldn't. There we go. So maybe this one is fine. Yeah. Of course, you can, if you want to clean it manually, you can. You can use the Zmodeler to remove some of these loops, but I think this is just fine for what we want. Let's go to dynamic, enable dynamic. I'm actually going to crease that, and yeah, let's add some thickness as well. And let's use the gizmo. And again, just because this is a single-sided mesh, it's a lot, and we have dynamic subdivision, it's a lot easier to just manipulate this piece like so. And maybe this gap is too much. So actually, let me show you something else that is pretty cool. So using one of the new tools as well as an existing tool, we can go to the masking palette. And the masking palette, we can click on mask by feature. I'm just going to select the border. So now we have masked the border of that, of this mesh. And let's hold Control and select the mask lasso. I'm going to invert that, and I'm just going to mask this area, right? So basically, all I did there was to, if I invert that, is to protect these edges at the top and bottom. And then I can bring in the gizmo, center it somewhere in here, and use the focal shift to scale this like that. So it's just going to be a lot cleaner. Let's actually put that there. Right? So I'm not distorting this as much. Let's click that mask. And then just a quick smooth. And because we're using dynamic subdivision, it's pretty straightforward. All right, cool. So let's have a look at the Bevel Pro, because that's pretty cool as well. And we can do some fancy things in here. All right, so for the Bevel Pro, maybe let's go ahead and select this guy. And I'm going to duplicate it one more time. So again, we have the original in case things don't work out. Let's keep it simple first. So I'm going to duplicate this one. So just the mask, right? So the mask, this bit here, let's go to geometry, apply the dynamic subdivision. So when we do that, we're going to have subdivision levels already, and then we're going to have thickness. That's fine. Maybe subdivide a bit more, right? So now that we have applied that, this is what the mesh looks like. And we have polygroups. Excellent. And what I want to do is create a bevel around this edge. You could have done that with other tools in this case, but I just want to show you the Bevel Pro. So the first thing I want to do is show you that Bevel Pro works with polygroups. So that's kind of like the basics of it. So I'm going to hold Control and Shift to access select rectangular piece. So I'm going to display properties just in case. And I'm going to hide these parts. Polygroup visible. Do the same thing in here. Polygroup visible. And the same thing for the edge. Polygroup visible. So we basically have three polygroups, the one at the back, the one at the front, and at the front, and the one in the edge. So that's all we need really to be able to drive where we want the beveling. And ultimately that's what I want, right? I want to create bevel around these areas as well as this area, so the edges. And that's it. So now I can go to Bevel Pro, which is in the subtool, so palette, I believe. Yep, here we go. And click on Bevel Pro. You can also find it in the Z plugins. Bevel Pro is the same here. So I'm going to click on Bevel Pro, and that will fire up a new window that is GPU based. Let's just wait until it, okay, so it brought it up to my other monitor. Here we go. That's it. That's basically what Bevel Pro is. Now, there's a few things in here that we can go over, but they're very simple, simple tools. In fact, like the defaults is exactly what I want. If you want to, I go into a lot more depth in the tutorial that I shared online on my YouTube channel. But basically, once you have established the different polygroups, the difference between the colors, the difference between the IDs, that edge, that's where ZBrush is going to place the Bevel Pro meshes, because it's going to generate a Boolean operation. So basically what you see here, hang on, I need to change my, okay. I haven't updated my tablet. So basically the pink area is kind of like hard to see. So that pink area, that is actually geometry, or like a preview of the geometry that is being generated. So you won't be able to see that, but let's say I just take that bit and it's some geometry, like a cube extruded along this edge, or not a cube, like the profile would be something like this. Hang on. So the profile would be something like this, just using the Bevel Pro. Right? So the blue line, that's the actual edge of the polygroup, right? So that means if we look at the profile, so this thing would be like that. And if we look at the profile, that's the line right here in the center. Actually, not there. Let's undo that. So there's gonna be, so this is the actual edge of the mesh, right? So we have a sharp edge here, right? So that point, or that line, is actually this line telling you where the center of that, the intersection of the polygroups is. And then you have the bright red line. That's kind of like, that's the bevel, right? Which is also the width of that bevel, right? So that's why you have two lines. So ultimately, that will be this line in here. I'm going to make it pink so that it's easy to see. Well, kind of easier. So you have two lines, two dotted lines for that pink here. So that's 1 and that's 2, right? And yeah, you can change all of that in here. I'll get to that in a second. I just want to give you kind of like the basics of this. So these would be the equivalent of this point in here and this point in here in the profile of this Bevel Pro. So ultimately what you want to do is organize or move all of these sliders and fixing edges or whatever. So all these tools, all you're doing actually is just to change this thing, or most of the things are just to change this kind of like geometry that is being created around it, right? So if you, for example, let's not go crazy with the paint over. So if you, for example, change the mesh offset amount, that's the thickness of that temporary mesh that is going to create things around. So basically that is looking at this bevel that you set up, right? With other, other sliders like the bevel amount and all of that. It's looking at that and it's saying, all right, the offset would be this much, right? So if I increase that, then it's just pushing, things more like this, right? If I decrease this mesh amount, or this mesh offset amount, is pushing it closer here. The problem when you do that, like if in this case, I think it's gonna work fine, I hope. But if you push it closer, you will start to see that the mesh itself is creeping through that pink mesh, or that pink temporary thing. I don't know how to describe it, but basically if we change that, then you'll have, say, if we change this to, small number here, we're gonna push that fake mesh or that temporary mesh here, right? And that basically, this mesh is not gonna cover this bit in here of the original mesh. I don't know if that makes sense, but let me just, I was just trying to give you kind of like the theory behind it, but let's go ahead and do the actual polygroup it, which is, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can change the bevel amount here. 0.256 is, I think, is a good amount, but you can, increase that. Right, so that's what you're getting. You can click on preview edges and to see the actual geometry that is generated, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna leave it as it is. You can change the resolution of that geometry as well. And if you click on auto apply, you will be able to see the bevel. So now that I have clicked auto apply, you can say, you know what, this could be smaller. So let's go back to 0.1. But maybe that is too much. Like that. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And let's go ahead and set the resolution. Let's preview the edges. Let's set the resolution to 1. So there's no subdivisions. It's like a simple strip of points. And now that's it. Like, I'm not gonna do anything more than that. That's all I wanted to. But let's turn off preview edges. The big thing for me here is that if you click on auto apply and click OK, ZBrush is going to basically boolean this and just give you this mesh that you see in Bevel Pro. That's what you're gonna get. That's it, and that works just fine, right? My preference is to click on auto applied off so that you don't see it. I mean, you can click it to see what this does in Bevel Pro and then turn that off and click OK. So when I do that, ZBrush is by default is going to enable live booleans, because ultimately what Bevel Pro does, let's go here. I'm in solo mode, so and this is where the virtual or the visibility sets come in handy, because I want to be able to just work on those two things, right? So one thing I can do is get out of solo mode, go to visibility set 5, and I'm gonna set this on, and this one as well, which is the mesh that was generated, and turn this polyframe off. So this is what the Bevel Pro generated, right? This is what we have, the mask with the bevel around it, okay? But this is just the live boolean. So in other words, this mesh, this is the pink thing that I was setting up. So just gonna give it a pink color for demo purposes. So this mesh all around it, that's, as you can see, that's the mesh that that I was playing around with in Bevel Pro. And that's what I try to explain in terms of the these things in here. So let's see, this is gonna be a bit messy, but see the profile that I have in here. That's what I was trying to say, that this is the bevel, right? That's what we kind of like chopped that corner of the edges of the original mesh, and then that extrusion or that offset, that's this, right? So yeah, it ultimately, like I said, is the mesh. Sorry about the mess. So it's just a mesh. So when we turn off auto apply and you just click OK in Bevel Pro, ZBrush is going to maintain the original mesh, no problem. Exactly the same thing as we had before. Is going to also create a mesh, which is, in my opinion, the best way, non-destructive way of working. And then it's automatically gonna set this to be subtractive and enable live booleans. So if I just look at this, I can see the effect of that mesh being applied, right? So all I have to do now really is, let's select this, create a folder just to make it easier. Hang on, I don't have a keyboard next to me. And then put this one inside. So now I have this folder that has the Boolean mesh, the subtractive mesh, and the mask. I'm gonna click on the gear icon. And in this case, I don't have subdivision level or dynamic subdivision. So I'm gonna click on just Boolean folder. And that will hide the original. So this folder has the two things that were generated and it's automatically hidden. And then it's gonna give me the resulting mesh. This kind of like artifacts that you can see here, this is just poly paint because, you know, ZBrush tries to keep the polypaint from the Boolean operation. So I'll just fill that with a white color. That fixes that thing. So it's just a polypaint. And yeah, so now if I enable polyframe, we have, obviously it's a Boolean mesh, so we would have to do a zero mesh if we want a cleaner topology. But I just want to show you something else. So the meshes here, again, it's just a mesh, it's just a Boolean operation, but it's super clean. Like, that's all I want, right? And because we have polygroups, you can just go to the process of doing zero measure with polygroups enable again, and that would just fix the topology. I'm just gonna move forward because we have about 15 minutes left. I wanted to show you something else. And let's go back to, let's add another visibility visibility set 6, V6, and let's get out, let's see. Let's add this one. So that is just the helmet stuff. And yeah. So V6 is just the helmet. Cool. So you'll see it's pretty cool just to add those edges in there. Something else that I'm going to show you maybe in a different object that I think is pretty cool. Let's take a cube, make it polymesh 3D. Let's simplify this. Initialize QCube. Hang on, let me just set this up. Okay, so this is just a cube with some subdivision levels and polygrouping, right? So what I can do is isolate. So this is nothing to do with that helmet thing that we're doing. Just wanted to show you something else. Auto group, invert, auto group. So yeah, so we have two polygroups, one blue and one purpley or pink. So yeah, let's go ahead and bring in the Bevel Pro again. Because again, I just want to show you something. Usually, this is basically what I want to show you is that the Bevel Pro is not just limited to those flat edges that you can create. So, all right. So we have this. I'm just going to increase the bevel amount a tiny bit more, so it's a bit thicker. And I think maybe not too much. Let's auto apply to see the edges, the preview edges. And you see, because it's a relatively simple topology, we end up with this type of thing. And I think we can even go more bevel. Yeah, I think that's okay. So pretty simple. I'm going to auto apply this time because I don't care about, I don't want to do the operation twice. This is just to show you something else. So I'm going to leave auto apply to show you what it does. Click OK. So it automatically applies the bevel. So in the subtool sub palette, I only have one mesh. That's it. But obviously, let's turn this off. You know, this bevel is really good for certain things in the hard surface modeling space, but you end up with those flat things. But if you want to do something a bit different, like more of a rounded bevel to it, you can totally do that. You can run the same process again, and now that you have other polygroups, you can add bevels to the bevels. But you can also select something like the Zmodeler. We can right click because we have this continuity of polygons. It should work fine, I think. Let's see. Insert. Yep. So I'm gonna click on insert multi-edge loops. Click once, just so that we create a poly loop or an edge loop, sorry, right in the middle. And then I'm gonna right click on this. I'm gonna click on bevel, and you can also change these to be, oh, just leave it as it is. I'm gonna click and bevel this like so. Maybe around there. And then use the Q mesh polygroup all to click and drag, so you can extrude this. So this is another thing actually. So you can create this sort of like paneling. Maybe we can push this in really easily along the edges. Or what is actually going to show you is that you can click and drag, and if you hold Shift, you will just move that like so. So you get more of that rounded edge in here, and we can go ahead and right click, bevel, and repeat that process in here and in here. So now we have a more like a rounded shape in those areas. So hopefully that helps and makes sense. So you can use the Bevel Pro to kind of like drive the initial setup, and then use other tools like the Zmodeler to refine that. So that's the idea, right? To utilize the tools, that the new tools, and combine it with your existing workflows. All right, so let's go back to the last 10 minutes that we have to this helmet. Let's see how we're going. Yeah, thank you, Epicman. So yeah, let's increase the, just do tweaks to this, just to sharpen things a bit more. Just want to refine that a bit. This one as well. Cool. So another really cool feature in ZBrush, a new feature, is the bas relief. So I'm just gonna try to create like some ornaments to this using bas relief, just to show you what that does. So let me go into Photoshop. I had prepared something. I don't know if we're gonna have time, but I'll show you anyway. So this is Photoshop. This is just an ornament that I found online that I think could fit the, you know, the stylization of the character. And actually in Photoshop, the latest version of Photoshop, there is this amazing thing that I love as well. That is, it recognizes the object, so you can, from a single image, this is just a JPEG, I think, you can click on this icon here and select, and Photoshop is automatically going to isolate that object, which is, I think, is awesome. And yeah, and then I can just, hang on a second, let's just duplicate that. And let's go ahead and, hang on, just give that a black background. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. And I'm just gonna save it as a Photoshop file in my desktop. And go back to ZBrush. And we can model that bit. I just wanted to show you a couple of things actually. So let's go ahead and go to the texture palette. I had already imported this version, but I'm gonna import a new one with the black background. Selected. This is the reference image, and I'm gonna click on Add to Spotlight. And here's the spotlight. And because the reason I use Photoshop to isolate the object and create a black background is just so that it comes as transparency in ZBrush. So yeah, basically ZBrush reads pure black as transparent. So that's the only reason, so that I can see that a little bit better. Now I'm going to show you something that I think it was added in the previous version of ZBrush. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it's in the latest one. I remember playing with this during the beta testing, and it's pretty cool because once you bring this in, you can use these. Now I forgot what it is. Yeah, here. This edge detect. So this is a new feature of the Spotlight that allows you to, when you bring in an image, it allows you to see the edges or extract the edges of the image, so that it's a lot easier to kind of like trace things out. So I can click on this, and you'll see it just does this, and you can just click and drag to adjust it. Right, but that's a lot easier to create this type of things. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you that extra thing, which is, I don't think is very obvious in the update. So yeah, so now let's go to the hang on, I don't have my tools again. Let's get into Z. All right, and let's move this out of the way for a second, or actually, let's create another set and append a sphere, and then just keep that sphere in the visual set 7. All right, so also let's go to brush, go to samples, and spotlight projection off so that we can work with the different brushes. All right, so what I'll do is with this sphere, I'm going to try to recreate this relatively quickly using some of the tools. So first, this area right here, that's pretty easy. That's just going to be a sphere. There. Done, maybe smaller than that. And another thing I want to do right now is go to the document, draw palette, and at the bottom, I'm going to store a camera. Whoops, let's turn perspective on then. Store a camera. Let's call that camera. That's it. And now, so I can, move things around, and then always go to camera and click on these arrows, and then switches between different cameras. So now that I have these, let's go ahead and create a folder for these ornaments and duplicate that sphere within it. So now we have two spheres. So in order to create these, what I'll do is I'm just going to scale this thing like so. I think that would be the best way to go about it. Place it around there, and I'm going to move the gizmo to this point. So, I can rotate it like this, but using the focal shift, again, my favorite feature of 2022, I can go ahead and do this type of thing. So, just going to find the right shape. That's not bad. How cool is that? So let's do this. Let's push this one down a bit, maybe less or more positive values so that we don't affect that as much. Perfect. And then with the move brush, you can adjust this slightly. I'm gonna have to rush this a bit. I wanted to spend more time on this one, but I think you get the idea, right? All right. And of course, we can redynamesh this. Where's my dynamesh? Yeah, that's fine. That's plenty. I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this. Place it over there inside the folder. And I'm just going to move this one out of the way to create this one. It's kind of like additional curly area. I think it's gonna be easier to do it the other way around. Actually, let's just delete that one. It's a lot easier to just duplicate a fresh thing. And let's go through the same process. So think it's just a lot easier to do it this way. So with the pivot point in here. There we go. Let's make sure place it properly in the camera. And then we can take these. We can also use masking tools as well, right? And blur that mask. All right, I think, yeah, you get the idea. This might take a little while, but you can do this type of additional ornaments with the same process, just duplicating the basic sphere, placing these. Let's go ahead and do that. Scaling things like so. Right, and then placing this. I have to change the depth of that. Yeah, but a lot of fun to play with those things. So I'm gonna turn off that thing, and let's just fix this placement of all of that. So let's bring in the gizmo again, and I'm gonna rotate this from this angle just to give it a bit of a curvature there. All right, so I'll just go ahead and merge these two down. In fact, we can merge everything together. So the folder itself, we can merge that folder, go into Dynamesh, select the resulting mesh, go into Dynamesh, and Dynamesh the whole thing. Use the smooth brush to smooth everything out. And then we can use, the usual sculpting tool. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. So standard brush. We also probably need to go to the brush palette, go to auto masking, and turn on the back face masking, so that we don't affect the back side of this mesh. And we have about 10 minutes, so yeah, I reckon I'm gonna go faster here, but I reckon we have time to generate that bas relief thing. So I'm just pressing Alt just to push things in, and then the normal effect of the brush to push things out. I use the move brush as well. And then the inflate brush. Targeting those edges, we can increase the dynamic resolution a little bit. And let's go ahead and use maybe the chisel, this describe standard. To carve this thing out. Perfect. Let's do the same thing in here. And because it's a curve, we can change the size of the brush dynamically. That would do that. Let's go ahead and invert the effect. Holding the Alt key just to push that area out. I'm just making things up now. Anyway, you get the idea, right? So you can spend a lot more time doing this. What I'll do is also go to the deformation palette. I'm gonna polish things a bit just to soften that transition. Maybe go with the damp standard brush and sharpen some of these crevices here. Inflate brush. All right, so this is just more of the same, right? Polishing thing, we can actually use a clay polish as well. So clay polish, just to sharpen those things. Anyway, just to make it a little bit more interesting, because we didn't have to do, we didn't have enough time to do much more than this. I'm just going to duplicate this, rotate it. We can flip or mirror it. Right? This is a horrible swirly thing, but with more time, I think you get the idea. All right, so let's merge these down. So now we have this mesh that we can, apply to the helmet if it was like a nicer thing. So yeah, the way that the bas relief works is you have two options. You can project a subtool like I have in here, and that is from the project bas relief, or you can create an alpha, which is a bas relief alpha from the alpha palette. And you have the same sort of like controls. The bas relief, the count is kind of like the resolution. The bas relief contrast obviously gives you contrast. The tolerance is how like the depth of it, and the blur is just to blur it a little bit. So yeah, let's do both really quickly. In fact, because we already have this isolated in the canvas, ZBrush is going to grab whatever is fitted in the canvas, right? And it can generate that bas relief based on that. So let's turn this off. And I'm going to click on Make Bas Relief. You can also enable texture if you have some kind of color already in here. I click on Make Bas Relief. And obviously, because I had the inflate brush selected, it just created here. But now we have a bas relief based on what we have in the canvas, which is pretty awesome. In fact, this is my new method of generating alphas. I don't rely on the alphas anymore because the bas relief gives you like a nicer and smoother way of creating that. And that's it. So let's go ahead and actually let's change this to the standard brush. Standard. I'm going to change the stroke to drag rect, and I'm going to click on bas relief. Go to the helmet. We need to apply the dynamic subdivision so we have enough resolution, maybe more than that. We have 2 million polygons. There we go. And then we can tweak the intensity of that as well. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, we can make like intricate patterns like this. And I'm gonna make use of the other tools like the masking on the masking palette. So just to mask the mask change points. So it masks that automatically. We can boost that mask to sharpen it. So that way I can, create more of these without affecting the rest. So we can create a very cool, intricate pattern. Let's do boost as well. Right. In fact, let's turn the rest of the stuff on so that we know where we're placing things. Right, so that's not bad. I mean, it's not great because of the design of that swirly thing, but it does look really interesting. Mask change points, boost mask. I'm really not designing thing at this point. I'm just literally placing things in areas that I think might look cool. All right, so that's not bad. Let's do it from the other side here. Oops. All right. I think that, I think that works. The other bas relief, which, we can project it maybe here, this area, is just a matter of positioning the actual subtool. So let's scale. That's way too big. All right, so in this case, it's much easier to do what I just did before, to apply that bas relief. That looks really nice. But just to show you, the alternative is to have the actual mesh on the canvas. Anything that you want to use to apply that bas relief, basically visible. So in this case, just that helmet. And yeah, it will just project it. It will project whatever. It will project whatever you have visible in the canvas on whatever you have selected. So if I want to project this thing onto the helmet, what I need to do is select the helmet, and anything else will be projected, right? If we have like a sphere floating around there, it will be projected as well. And now we can go to the bas relief, click on project bas relief, and that's it, right? So obviously it's way too strong. So we can change all of that from those sliders in here. The contrast, the tolerance, and all of that can be changed from there. But that's basically what the bas relief project is. In this case also, it was, I think, was too separate from the mesh. So that also, I think that also affects it. Let me try that again. No, not really. So yeah, we can just increase the count, blur things a bit, and then reduce the bas relief. Maybe that was too much. But yeah, it's just a matter of playing around with that. That was like too much, too crazy. Point is that for this type of things, for like helmet and ornament stuff, I would definitely use these this method. So let's bring in this thing as well. So for the mask itself, maybe we can add some subdivision to this. Yep. So how many we have in here? 7. All right. Turn on transform. Right. And then just to wrap it up, let's use the scribe standard again with a small brush size. Oops. Holding the Alt key just to do some more like custom things. Maybe change the intensity a bit so that it matches. Oh no, I should have not done that. All right, I think this is going to crash ZBrush. But we had a pretty good run through today, and yeah. Anyway, let's see if there's some questions that I could ask, or that I can ask, that I can answer while this thing tries to recover. Would probably use alpha. I cannot load UIs. I'm not sure why that is. I was able to load UI, no problem. When you click on preferences and UI, the buttons are blank. I think, well, you don't load the UI from the UI. So you load the UI from the main palette. Yeah, I think I crashed ZBrush. That was a human error. Cool. All right, guys. So again, we had a pretty good run throughout this session today. It's just at the end, I just made a mistake, but everything else worked just fine. So again, hopefully this was of help. Let me know what you think about this. If you wanna, I go into like more about a little bit more in depth into some of these features in the tutorial that I shared online on my YouTube channel. So you can just go to that YouTube channel and go through that. It's a pretty long video, like an hour, but I just created some time stamps so you can just go to the feature that you want. And yeah, it's more explaining the feature, like I said, rather than doing this type of things, which is sometimes useful. All right, I'm just gonna close ZBrush, load that up again. Probably recover that, no problem. Or not. Oh, because we also probably lost the wings, which they were pretty cool. All right, so back in business. Yeah, so let's just leave it as it was. Yeah, we lost the details in here, but not a big deal. Alrighty. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna copy and paste this in here. Just to complete the workflow that I was sort of showing you. Copy, paste. And now we can select that old one I should have polygroups for that. This is an old version. All right, so now we have that thing. Right, so slightly different look to this character with that helmet and the wings and everything. But yeah, so hopefully this has been of help. One more thing just to wrap it up today, for the person who asked about the UI, Comics Legend. No, sorry, Diego. No. Yeah, so Diego. So if you go to Preferences, you don't load it from the custom UI. So this will be grayed out because that's not how you load a UI. This is just to create a custom palette, for example. So the way that you load UIs in ZBrush is on the configuration section, and then here you can load UI. So that might be the confusion there. So yeah. So the last thing I want to say is that if you go to that YouTube channel, to my YouTube channel where I share that video, you can actually download a custom UI that I did, which is basically the standard UI with an extra palette. So I'm gonna load it to show you what it is. Right, so it is exactly the same thing. There's no big change in the UI. It's the vanilla version of ZBrush. So what I've done for that video, if you want to follow along and kind of like learn more about those tools and features, is that now you have this palette called the 2022 features. So this is kind of like the way that I approach like new features and generally the methodology of teaching new users ZBrush stuff. And this is essentially the core of how my the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course, which is available, by the way, if you want to sort of like learn ZBrush from the ground up. That's how I teach ZBrush in that course. So we basically remove all the distractions and we create specific UIs so that we can focus basically on specific features, and then we bring everything together once we understand them. So this is the same idea, the same concept that I did here. So you can just download this UI, and if you look at it, then there are like 3 different kind of like palettes or sub palettes that I created, which I think it is just an easier way to kind of like see the new features or simplify the understanding of new features in ZBrush. And in the future, I probably will do the same thing. I think it's worked really well. So for example, mesh edits, you have the home stage, the switch stage, all of that. You have the focal shift for the gizmo, you have the Bevel Pro, you have the Dynamesh resolution. By the way, I didn't mention that. You can just click on that picker, and then that allows you to select a Dynamesh resolution based on a portion of the mesh. Again, I go into a little bit more depth in that video. Repeat active or repeat to active, that's on the deformation palette. The interpolate that I mentioned at some point with this sphere, the interpolate with the intensity and color, that's why I have that in here. So anything that is related to the mesh stuff or like editing the mesh. The productivity, I didn't mention any of these. We talked about the visibility icons in here, but this is kind of like things to deal with managing your tools and arranging things, aligning things, seeing the camera. So managing, productivity. Basically, all these tools are in here in productivity, and anything that is brush related stuff like the new knife rectangular, knife circle, the bas relief, which is, I put the bas relief in here, or the project bas relief, because it kind of creates an alpha for the brush, so it's related to that brush. The scribe chisel and the scribe standard that we also use today. I didn't get to show you the pattern brushes, but they're in here with the noise, the local projection mode, and the dual alpha and dual texture that we didn't get to show you today. But all of that is covered in that video, and I think just approaching it this way is a lot easier. You can isolate and understand a new feature a lot easier, and then you can, once you know about it, then you can go, oh, this is great to use with the masking tools, or this is great to use with something else, and then you can integrate those easily in your workflow, and it's not as overwhelming, especially if you're a new user in ZBrush, to get the plethora of like all of these tools that you have in ZBrush, and on top of that you have new things coming out, because ZBrush gets updated regularly, and then you get new really awesome things that improve the workflow. So it could be a little bit overwhelming to get, like, if you're new to ZBrush and then you get a new update with a whole bunch of other stuff, you go like, what should I look at? So kind of like isolating them like this, I think is easier. anyway, so that's all I wanted to say. You can go to that video where I cover all of that in YouTube, and you can, from the description of that video, you can download this UI where I isolated these things. So it probably it helps you understand them a little bit better. And again, if you want kind of like a full comprehensive course about, you know, getting started with ZBrush from the very beginning all the way up to like producing a nice character render, the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course, it's open, so you can enroll today if you wanted to. So let me just show you what that is. Oh, by the way, this is the 3D snippets that I was talking about. So let me just actually show you that. Someone asked at the beginning for the final render of that character. So this is the project gallery of the things that we've done in the past sessions. So yeah, this is the guy, you know, with the full color and the render that I did for that creature that I've been showing you. And hang on, let me just change here. There we go. So yeah, if you're interested in the 3D snippet stuff, it's just 3dsnippets.com. But if you go to 3dconceptartist.com, you can just go to courses. And the Extra Mile, we actually closed enrollment a few weeks ago, and the new students have been doing some amazing stuff in like just a couple of weeks. It's really cool to see the progress. So yeah, this is the one. So you can just click on the ZBrush Guide course, and that is like for absolute beginners. So if you're interested in learning ZBrush from scratch, we create this character from nothing. Like actually go from the very, very basics of what a pixel is. We talked about like the very early, the first papers that were released in ZGraph, like in 1999 or 2000s. So from the very basics to understand how ZBrush works, all the way to create this rendered character. So you can just go in here. I'll put a link in the chat if you're interested. Yeah, so it has everything that you need to know is in here, so you can just read through it. We have a pretty cool community in Discord as well. So yeah, I'll leave it up to you here if you want to join. It's available, so that's the reason I'm mentioning. You can go ahead and join now. All right, so I'm gonna leave it here, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you probably. Actually, I will see you next year. I don't know if I'm gonna have time in December, but maybe I will. Actually, there's a cool live stream among multiple streamers, but yeah, we'll talk about that later. Cool. All right, I'll leave it here, guys. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.